Welcome back guys to my channel, it's Molton here, and in this video we're going to be looking at a game between two youngsters, Zou Chen and Gukesh, whom at the time I'm making this video is one of the world's youngest grandmasters. The game features a bishop sacrifice against the Sveshnikov Sicilian, used by white to score an important win, so let's take a look. Okay, so the game starts out 1e4 c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, the open Sicilian, takes, black plays knight f6, knight c3, here black plays e5, introducing the Sveshnikov Sicilian. White normally goes knight to b5 to try and take advantage of the dark squares. Here, in order to stop the knight entering on d6, black usually plays d6 himself, which in turn weakens the light squares. Therefore, white goes bishop g5 in order to take advantage of the d5 square. Here black normally plays a6, knight a3, b5. White has several lines here, but white opts for bishop takes f6. And here black should take back with the pawn, since taking back with the queen would allow the knight to hop into the d5 square immediately. For example, after queen takes f6, white can play knight d5, and after queen d8 to defend c7, white has options between pawn to c4 and pawn to c3, all scoring very well for white in this position. Therefore, after bishop takes f6, black will normally recapture with the g-pawn, getting the temporary double pawns, but also giving him dynamic chances, since he will later get rid of the pawns by playing the move f5. Here white should play knight b5 to avoid the fork on b4. Black has two main options here between bishop g7 and f5, but f5 is by far the most popular one. Here the main line for white goes pawn to c3 in order to bring the knight back to the c2 square and perhaps maneuver it to e3. However, in this particular position, white also has a very exciting piece sacrifice, and that's the move bishop takes b5, which I've played myself in the past with very reasonable success. The idea is that after black takes, we take back with the knight, and if black's not prepared in this position or has never met this over the board before, then you might very well catch him off guard and by surprise. The obvious moves here, such as queen a5, don't quite work, since white can simply play the move pawn to c3, and the knight on b5 is untouchable due to the fork on c7. Another move might be rook to a7, however here we can simply take it, and after knight takes, play the move c3 with a big advantage for white, since black is not able to castle yet and white is already creating strong threats of queen a4 check, hitting the knight, as well as potential connected passed pawns with the a and b pawns in the endgame. One of the best options for black, I believe, is to play rook to a5, and after this move white has a number of options. For example, knight to c7 check, king d7, and here we can play a move such as queen h5, essentially forcing black to give up the rook for the knight on d5, since we're threatening queen takes f5 as well as queen takes f7. Therefore, after rook takes d5, we can play knight takes d5, and here, for example, after a move such as king e8 to defend the f7 pawn, white plays c3, black takes an e4, and white plays queen to e2. We reach a very unclear position where there's a very distinct material imbalance. Here it's really a question of whether white's connected passed pawns and the fact that black is yet to be able to castle and has already moved his king is enough compensation for giving him the two bishops and potential strong e and f pawns on the king side. Another option on move 13, which I prefer slightly more for white, is the move pawn to a4, simply supporting our knight on b5 and also threatening to play the move pawn to b4 next move. Here white has a very interesting position, and I believe that there's still a lot of chances for play by keeping our pieces on. It's definitely another move which I believe you should consider and look into for the white side. Instead, Gukesh went for rook a4, which is the move I expect most people will play here, after which white should follow knight check, forcing the king to go to d7 and then simply castling to the king side. Here Gukesh went for bishop b7, I'd also like to point out that black obviously can't take the pawn on e4 since this runs into a very cute checkmate after queen to g4 check. However, the main move and what I consider the most critical is rook takes e4, after which white should follow with queen to h5. And here black has a few options. Knight d4 is a very interesting option, which I consider slightly better than knight e7. Most people will play knight e7 here, and the games have followed queen takes f7, king c6, and here white can follow up with the move pawn to c4, protecting the knight on d4 and also threatening to bring the knight back from c7 to perhaps the b5 square or perhaps to the a8 square. Here several games continued queen d7. An interesting move for white here is to play knight to a8, looking to bring the knight back into the b6 square, attacking the queen and bishop. I had a game in this position where my opponent actually played king to b7, which allowed me to play knight to b6. And then he made a mistake by playing the move queen to e6. And can you spot the win for white in this position? That's right, I played the move knight takes c8. The idea being that if he takes my queen, I simply follow up with knight takes d6 check, forking the king and queen, and winning the piece back. However, instead of playing king to b7 on move 18, black also has the option of playing knight to g6, which is a slightly better option. White can follow up with knight b4 check. The best move for black is to go king b7, queen d5 check, forcing the king to go to either a7 or b8. And here, one game for white continued knight to b6, and after queen b7, queen b5, white went on to win. However, black has a big advantage in this position after the move knight to f4. Therefore, after king to b8, it's more advised for white to simply take the perpetual check. Here you can take perpetual check after knight c6, king a8, queen b5, threatening queen b8 check, queen c7, and here we can play queen a4 check, king b7, knight a5, king a6, queen b5 check, king a7, knight c6 check, king a8, and the position repeats itself with a draw for both sides. As is with modern chess, where we get lots of variations already analyzed to some sort of perpetual draw. However, on move 15, there's also a deviation that we should consider. After the move queen to h5, black also has another option here, and that's the move queen to h4. This one is also very interesting. So white should follow up with queen takes f7 check, bishop to e7, and then white can play the move knight to b5 to get his knight out of the way, also looking to perhaps play knight b6 check next move. Rook f8. Here we can play knight b6 check, king d8 for example, and here let's say we bring our queen into the game by playing queen to d5, knight d4. Let's say white takes it, rook takes, queen c6, bishop to e6, and here for example white has many options, but just to give you one sample line, queen a8 check, king c7, queen a7 check, king c6, g3, rook g8, and c4 by white, with a very unclear position for both sides. So of course none of these lines are forced, and there's many ways you can deviate in between, but it's simply to highlight the fact that the resulting setups for both sides are going to be very unclear. And if you're playing this line as white, you shouldn't be too unhappy with this resulting middle games, because this is what you want. You want to sack a piece, you want to go for unclear complications and hope that you make the best out of the chances you're given. Okay, so that's enough variation, so let's go back to the game on move 14. Instead, in the game, Gukesh played the move bishop to b7. After bishop to b7, white played an idea we've already seen before, and that's the move pawn to c4. So we're sacrificing this pawn. However, if black takes it, we get the open c file, as well as a lot of play on the queen side very, very quickly. Gukesh took the pawn, and here white immediately plays the move queen to b3, hitting the bishop and the rook and causing some problems for black to solve. Black plays knight to a5, white follows queen to b5, hitting all three pieces. Bishop to c6 was played. The idea is that if white takes the knight on a5, then black will take on d5, followed by taking the knight on c7, since we can't recapture of our knight because of the pin along 8 to a5 diagonal. Therefore, white plays knight b6 check, king takes c7 was played, queen takes a5, already setting up some nasty discovered checks along this diagonal. Rook c5 is played to attack the queen, but here white already has a very strong initiative on the queen side, and we can see that black's counterplay on the king side it hasn't really started yet, and it's very easy for white to generate strong threats before black ever gets going. Here the game continued bishop to b7, white played b4 to attack the rook went to c6, and white played rook to c1, threatening to take the rook and bring the other rook into the c1 square. Black played queen e8, knight d5 check, king c8, and white maintained the pressure by threatening to just push the a pawn up the board with the move pawn to a4. And here it looks like black is stuck, and it's very difficult for black to find a move, but Gukesh demonstrates a piece of very strong analysis with the move bishop to h6. At first it looks like white can actually just take this rook on c6 and should be clearly winning, since after rook takes c6, black's unable to take back with the bishop because of the mate on c7, and therefore he should take back with the queen. But it looks like white is simply winning after the move knight to e7 check, forking the queen and king. After king c7, white can take the queen on c6, being a whole queen up. However, this is where Gukesh demonstrates his calculation with the move rook to a8, trapping the queen in the corner. Here the best move for white, since the queen is trapped, is to give it up by playing queen takes rook, takes, and then play b5 to protect his knight on c6. But here Gukesh's idea is to finally take the pawn on e4, and he's hoping that the two bishops plus the strong central pawns will give enough compensation and counterplay to compensate for the exchange deficit. Here white played rook e1, forcing black to play f5 to protect the e-pawn, and here white played the move knight to e7, attacking the pawn f5, which forces f4, temporarily blocking the bishop's control over the c1 square. And here's where white starts to take full advantage with the move rook to c1 check, king b6, knight to f5, bishop g5 was played. Since bishop f8 would run into rook c8, h4 was played, bishop f6, rook c8. But now we start to see that white's pieces are dominating the bishops, and the bishops are a bit stuck. They don't have many squares to go to, and the black pawns aren't able to yet roll up the board. e3 was tried, but here simply white takes it, bishop e4, and after rook f8, white is winning at least one of the bishops back and trading pieces at the same time into a comfortably winning endgame. So all in all, I believe this bishop sacrifice still has great surprise value, especially with so little people playing it anymore. And if you don't mind going into messy, unclear positions, then this could be a great line for you. If you enjoyed this video guys, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so, as well as tapping that notification bell so you get notifications every time I upload a new video. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Until next time.